In today's video, we're talking about the variable ND filter from Tiffen. Other brands, obviously, just Tiffen is the one that I own. Now, what is a variable ND? There's actually a common phrase that's thrown around quite often, which is sunglasses for the camera. That's better. Sunglasses for the camera, eh? So what does that mean? Just a dark bit of glass? Well, not just one dark bit of glass, there's actually two. It's two polarizers that spin in opposite directions to kind of cross over and darken the glass in front. As you can maybe see when I spin this, I don't know if you can see, but I'll spin it anyway. I can see it's dark now, I don't know if you can. And it gets light again. And dark. And that's why it's called a variable. You can get just NDs, which are a solid stop, or 2, or 3, or 10. These ones have markers on the edge, which allow you to kind of pinpoint where you want the exposure to be. Completely useless to me. I always have to keep looking over at the lens because they don't stop at the minimum or maximum, which is pretty poor. And you never want to actually go to maximum because you can risk completely destroying your image. It gets very blue, very black in places as well. I always go one bit before the maximum if I had to use the maximum, which actually on a sunny day you do often. You probably need to know why you'd even use one. Let's remember why in the first place we're setting our aperture quite low, if we are. It's to create that nice creative background blur, which makes it more cinematic. It throws the background out of focus, keeps me in focus. What if it's a sunny day and you're filming and you're using that well-known term, the 180-degree shutter angle? So let's just say, for example, at this camera right now, I'm shooting at 24 frames a second. My shutter speed, it's double 50th of a second. That allows for nice natural movement of blur and stuff, which is very common in cinema. I don't want that to change, because then you'll start getting some Sherlock Holmes style action scenes, or Kingsman where they're doing the fight scene, where it's very sped up kind of looking, which is great for those sort of films. But if you want natural motion blur within the movement, you need to keep the shutter speed double what your frame rate is set to. Frame rate? Not, yeah. Frames per second, yeah, frame rate. Just getting confused myself. Guys, it's quite hot in here. Okay, so you've got your shutter speed locked. Can't change that. I want to also lock my aperture at the lowest probably on the lens. Say it was this lens, and it's 1.8, the maximum aperture it could be. I would want to keep that for the cinematic look. So shutter speed's locked, aperture's locked. The only flex is your ISO, but here's the big but. If you're in sunshine, outdoors, which we'll go outside in a minute and do some examples, your ISO will already be at the minimum. It'll be at 100 and there's no leeway on there. So you're stuck. You're at the lowest ISO, your lowest aperture, and your shutter speed is stuck. So what do? We need to somehow darken the exposure that's coming into the camera. And that's where ND filters come in. Because of the black glass in front of the lens, this naturally will make your image look exposed when it's overexposed. And we just rotate it to get the right exposure. Hence why a variable ND is quite useful. So let's recap, yeah? Aperture, locked down, 1.8. Shutter speed, locked down, 1/50th if you're filming in 24 frames. If you're filming in 30 frames, it'll be 1/60th. Yeah? You get me? ISO. It's at the minimum. I can't budge. Black glass for the win. They're not the cheapest of filters to buy, and what I would recommend is you buy the biggest filter thread size for your biggest lens. So, for example, I've got a 77mm thread on this 16 to 35. My 100mm is 67, and then we go all the way down to this one, which is 49. So how do we get a 49mm thread to fit a 77mm. Cheap as chips step-up rings. I've got one for my macro, 100mm, and I got one for the nifty 50. Combine these together, we will have a filter thread size. It fits on there, just like that. Love that sound. Let's do it again. Oh. Is that it? That was the sound. And as you can see now, they're gonna fit like a glove. Done. And now we can have dark glass on my smallest lens. So we're going to take this lens probably just to show kind of the extreme depth of field and why you'd need to use the variable ND. We'll take that outside, capture some shots. There's a lot of bright sunshine, and this will truly show why you need to get one of these in your kit bag. As you can see, we've got one of my dogs. This is Morris. He's busy enjoying a little chew in the garden, and I've got the camera set at an aperture of 7.1 just to get him exposed. Now we don't want that. We want to blur that background because the shed in the background, I'll focus on it, the shed over there, too sharp for my liking. So what happens if I blur that? We know it's going to happen. Down to 1.8. He's overexposed now. So we're going to add the filter. Right, so now the filter's added at the minimum. It always adds a little bit of a stop of darkness. He's still overexposed. We'll start. Morris, go back in your frame. We'll start. Snake. We'll start bringing down towards the maximum, and around about halfway, he's gone. But we had good exposure then. They say never work with dogs. Where's your bone? This is Gracie. She's a diva. So yeah. Now we got an aperture of nice 1.8. So we got background blur. Morris is barely in focus, just as you can see. And in its simplest form, this is why you need one. Gracie, come here. No. And then without it, even though the sun's gone in a bit now, without it, that's at 1.8, shutter speed a 50th of a second, ISO 100. Gracie is completely overexposed, so we'd have to either increase the shutter speed, which we don't want to do, remember, we're locked, so it's just the aperture that could change if you haven't got one. And then, unfortunately, our fence that's falling down becomes in focus at 7.1. And as an example again, we'll put it back on. There we go. Aperture back down to 1.8. And Gracie is lovely exposed. Where'd you go? Where'd you? Here we are at the maximum, just to show kind of what happens when you do push it to the max. Gracie, you're right in the way. We'll focus on you then instead. When you start going back a little bit, you can see it suddenly changes to blue and green. Very extreme. I've had to fake the ISO to make it daylight, because otherwise it'll be black, but never ever go to max. Otherwise you get that. So that is why you need to get one. It allows you to film in bright sunshine. It allows you to hang out in the garden with the dog poo and film yourself, which is what everyone wants. And as I said, there's other brands available. You haven't got to go for the Tiffen. Be wary of the cheaper ones though. This is a good mid-range, upper level one. Polar Pro do some great ones. But beware of the ones that are cheaper, as they will affect the image quality, the sharpness of your footage. So make sure you invest in at least one good one big enough to cover your largest lens, step down rings to help get onto the other smaller lenses that are in your kit bag. Buy once, use lots. Have fun.